Welcome to Longterm. I'm Ty King, and this podcast that you found yourself on right now, we have been talking about so many really incredible circumstances that people have gone through, overcome, and then now sharing those life experiences with us now. And how did they find success afterwards? I think all of us can kind of relate where there's something that we needed to heal from. There's always that briefcase in our closet, right? And it's not just full of skeletons, it's just full of trauma. It's full of experiences, that things that we've gone through, we haven't unpacked. And, as normalized as, therapy has become for a lot of people, there's still just so much that it's so hard to talk about because of the trauma, of course, but also the stigma. It's not comfortable to sit into, some of the hardest things that we've talked about and been through, and to sit in it and really analyze yourself. And I think that's the only way forward that we can actually improve ourselves, is by looking at these hard situations we've been through, survived, become successful on the other side. Of course, it comes with a lot of heartache. It comes with a lot of different circumstances and things that we have to come and heal from. But I am always excited to talk with people who have been, no. This is like you go to the theater and you watch these movies of these characters that were scripted and written to have these incredible stories, but they live around us. They're all around us all the time. And so to be able to talk to some people like Dr. Liz Fiedler Mergen here, that we're going to talk with you about some of the things that you've been through. And I'm excited to talk to you. I know we were just in the same location in Orlando. We were both there for Pie Fest, but both so busy we couldn't even meet at the same location, at the same physical space, in a certain amount, I guess, square feet, because we must have passed each other at some point. But yeah,
Oh, I'm sure
Dr.
we
Liz,
did.
yeah, so glad to have you on the
Yeah,
show.
hi. Thank you
Yeah,
for
hi.
having me. And I think we were ships passing in the night. We both had so many things to do, and it's, okay, well, we'll
Yeah,
we'll touch base next week. It's already on the calendar, and there we go.
right.
But thank you for having me, and I admire the work that you're doing with your podcast, and I'm excited to share a little bit of my perspective, a little bit different than the stories you typically have, but I like to share my experience and my insights of what I've been through to try to help others, because think that there's a lot more depth to grief and loss and changing plans and, you know, having living a life that was not your plan and those secondary losses. And I think that sharing my story just helps people feel a little less lonely and understanding and just more empathetic if they have a friend or family member going through something similar.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I know you've got a lot of things that are going on now. And so I'm meeting Liz now in 2026. So Liz has gone through a long life of situations and things, though, experiences, though. So you want to, let's go ahead and just get into it and start it. Like, I'll talk about how, well, what are you doing now for a little bit, and then we'll go back into where you came from.
hmm So right now, and it's going to sound like, wow, this girl has her stuff together. These things really took off. But it's one of those entrepreneurial stories that it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And I would say 2026 is the year that the plane is finally taking off, right? It's been on the runway. We've done all these things for the last couple of years, but as of right now, I live on a flower farm in central Minnesota. The doctor is I have a doctorate in nursing. I used to be a full-time nurse practitioner, and I still do work 1 day a week because that steady paycheck is sure nice to have. I
Of
work 1 day
course.
a week from home doing video visits, but I have an event venue on my farm. So I live on a farm in central Minnesota, and we have
Nice.
a venue that hosts up to 160 people, and we have a flower farm. We grow acres of flowers, very specialty premium flowers. We sell them to florists. We use them in our own weddings. We'll probably do flowers for about 60 brides this year in a 20-week period. I've got, some seasonal staff. I've got a full-time florist designer. And then in our venue, we call it an everything but weddings venue. And that was
Mm,
intentional because there's dozens of places to get married, but there are not many places to have a shower, to have a rehearsal dinner, to have a graduation party.
That seems like a
And
natural
those
place
are
for a
all
wedding to
events that
go. A
people,
flower
yeah,
farm.
it
Uh,
is a cool place for a wedding, but I wanna do 3 to 5 weddings every
yeah,
weekend.
I love
So
that.
I wanna be every venue's favorite florist, and if I'm
Yeah,
also their competition, that doesn't really work. And so even though you could pretend like community over competition, it would
that's right.
still have this little thing. And so,
Yeah,
I can refer people, and I've built this community of people that come out and they can come pick their own flowers. We host a monthly, we call it Flower League, where you come out and you play music bingo and you get a bouquet of flowers. And we have a food truck,
uh,
and it's just a different setting. We don't sell food or alcohol, but we have what's called a consumption and display permit, so people can bring their own beverages, they can bring their own food, but we can kind of tailor it to what it needs to be. And that has made it very popular in like school sports banquets because it's not at a bar setting, or you can really just kind of control it a little bit more. So people like that, having a retirement party or something,
yeah, of
just a space that you can kind of tailor it to what you want it to be. And, the flowers are an optional add on, but most of them buy flowers because why wouldn't you? They're
course.
beautiful. And, we can do activities. We host corporate retreats. People can come out and we'll plan the whole day for them. So that's really what my flower farm, Sunny Mary Meadow, has turned into. And then at the same time, I host a podcast called Rooted Agritourism. And that's exactly what I was talking about there. It's agritourism, so it's value added agriculture. And this is probably really different to your audience, but things like corn and soybeans and
So,
milk and
yeah,
beef,
and I'm
they're
from Arkansas,
commodity based
so
pricing. They're commodity based, so
yeah,
the markets fluctuate, and so they can work really hard, and they're just going to get what the market says it is worth at the time, no matter what their expenses were. And so for someone like me growing my own flowers, I get to set my own price, my own supply and demand, and I get to pair it with an experience. And then through my process of building my event venue, I had some area farmers that were not super happy about what I was doing. Somehow, they live a half a mile away, but they've decided that they don't agree that what I'm doing is farming, or, those types of
okay.
things. So it's just
Yeah,
navigating those, it's if you ever watch the show Parks and Rec, when
oh,
people are
yeah,
storming the
of
podium at the
course.
public hearing, that
Yeah,
that happened to me. But
that's
everything I'm doing is within the law, and I
right.
really don't think that the baby showers from 9 to noon on a Saturday are
Yeah,
affecting anybody. And
right.
um, we've yet to have anything go past 8 p.m., and I really don't think we will. And, we're not having concerts. We're not, but there's
Troublemaker,
there's
yeah.
that fear of the unknown, and there's, just that type of thing. But so the Rooted Agritourism podcast, and then I host other similar farmers. I host workshops for people that are trying to build similar businesses. And then on top of all that, I have a book that's coming out, my memoir, that's also has a lot of lessons on grief and everything that I went through and built, because we'll get to that in a moment. But also I have an app that's coming out, Farmers to Florists, that is essentially connecting people to selling flowers locally to florists, because right now 80% of flowers that florists traditionally use are grown outside of the US. And the problem isn't that we don't have the flowers, it's that there's not an easy way to connect it. And so this has kind of been a new boom in the last 5 years of people learning how to really push the envelope of growing these flowers in the United States, and the local movement is really taking off. So now we need to get them in the hands of people that need them. So in a nutshell, and then of course, naturally, when you have all of those things going on and you're well spoken, you get asked to speak. So I spend a lot of my time as a keynote speaker, and, a lot of those things. And which brings me back to the story of resilience and how this kind of all was built intentionally. And this is the sad part of the episode where we bring you back to my story. But I graduated from college as a nurse practitioner, started my career finally, did everything right, and ultimately my husband died of a heart attack in 2020. And 2 days after The day after the funeral, I found out that I was pregnant with our second child. And so I delivered her. He died in December. I delivered her that August. And this farm, it really, I mean, we had this little farm stand at the end of our driveway where people could take flowers and leave cash. And it was just kind of this fun little community building thing that we did during COVID because Minnesota had pretty strict lockdown. And it was just something that I thought, well, I have this big garden. This is just going to keep me busy. And it's a fun little side hustle. But when you start crunching the numbers, I was losing money on all of it, you know. And at some point, when the world opened back up, I wasn't going to spend every evening making bouquets after my day job, nor was my husband. And so that evolved into this simply by it started out as really determination. Like, I'm going to do this because this was his family farm. This was his land. I wanted to have this for our daughters. I got really burnt out with it, but I had to make a decision about a year and a half ago. Was I going to keep doing this? And if so, I needed to build this new event space. I needed to make it sustainable so that it was profitable enough to actually hire people, or I needed to let it go. But it was those first 3 years were definitely tough. So I think that's a little bit more of what we're going to talk about. But, so I started out saying, "Oh, here's all these great things that I do and I did, but let's get into what that really took to build it."
Right, exactly. But I think, we've talked to so many people who have gone through extraordinary circumstances like that, and like it's tragic, but I don't know. Just trying to take the analogy of like what you've built with your flower farm, right? And so taking the dirt and you plant your seeds and like you make something beautiful out of something that's been tragic, right? And I know that those are probably motivators in what pushes you now, for really, I mean, like really, really terrible, sad situation. Because like I can't even imagine. I can't put myself in your shoes and be like, your spouse dies, and the next day you find out you're pregnant, and now you're having, I mean, this is half and half of both of you, right? And so living on in a certain way through, your prodigy, your child. And now all of a sudden single mom, but also a widow. I mean, like, I hate to ask, but like, what was going through your mind at the time? And like, was it, I mean, I don't think anybody would deal with this in a healthy way. You know what I mean? I don't think there is a healthy way to
Yeah.
deal with this.
Yeah. No, I was angry. Anger is a normal stage of grief, but I was angry. I, I'm not kidding when I say I threw my printer at my bathroom mirror. I literally walked into my office, picked it up, and walked into my bathroom, and my mirror shattered everywhere. That was a week after he died. My dad was here. My 3-year-old daughter, because it was 2 days after her third birthday. It was the day after I found out I was pregnant, and my parents live 3 hours away. And I have 5 siblings that all live at least 3 hours away. And it was this, it was breakdown. Oh no, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And my sister at 22 years old had just graduated college, and she said, "I'll quit my job and move in with you." And because I was so angry. And, such, I would say the first 3 weeks were just a blur because, of course, it's Chris. So I went home to my parents' house for about a week. It was Christmas time.
Wow.
Um, During that time, I left, and it's Minnesota, so legally they can't, shut off some things, but some bills didn't get paid, and so they canceled my my dish network and my internet and stuff like that for missing one bill. But just things like that. And it's like I came back in January, and I talk about it all the time as well. I had every it was planned. It was intentional. It was, we took the responsible precautions, but I had privilege in my grief. I
Really?
was full-time as a nurse practitioner.
Yeah.
They weren't gonna fire me. I had been there. I qualified for FMLA. I could take short-term disability for 12 weeks, and they held my job, and I got paid 60% of what I got paid. A lot of people don't have that. A lot of people don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
We had life insurance. We didn't have a ton, but we had enough to where I wasn't going to have to sell my house and move, and I was able to cut back to 3 days a week working. And, we had a lot of expenses. My husband was a really high, he was a vice president at a bank essentially, and he managed a big region. And so, you know, it was a dip losing his income all of a sudden overnight, but I wasn't, there are plenty of things to be worried about, and finances, while it was stressful navigating it all, I still had every resource available to me that could have made things a lot worse, because it's, of course, and I talk about this a lot, with insurance companies. They really like to have me come and tell their life insurance agents my story, just to remind them that, hey, this work matters, and no amount of money or anything is going to make anyone come back, but the worrying about it and stressing about it is not going to make anything better, if that makes sense. And so we, so I was able to like take a little bit of time and pause and heal. And I went back to therapy. My husband and I had actually been through couples counseling with Pam. Pam's our therapist, and she laughed because we went, maybe it was right after I had graduated from nurse practitioner school, and I had been in school for 5 years, and he had taken on a lot of roles in our household. And so we finally were trying to navigate, this new marriage where he wasn't in charge of everything, if that's the right word. And it wasn't that he was, you know, like I'm in control, but it was he took a lot of things off of my plate while I was in grad school. So then we were trying to best navigate how to kind of shift things back and let go of some things and change the way we did things and work that through. And we looked it up, and he got, I think, 5 sessions a year through his, employer, whatever. And so we went and we treated it like a date. And it was that summer. It would have been a year and a half before he passed away. And so we met Pam. We went like 3 times, and she kind of was like, I think you guys are good. I mean, if you want to keep coming back, you can, but I think you're okay. And so that was, so I actually called her the day after I found out I was pregnant, and I called her office, and she happened to answer, not the receptionist, because it was a small private practice. And I told her what was going on, and she just said, "Okay, yeah, let's get you back in. I do remember you." So I again, those little things that really set me apart. I already had an established therapist that was essentially did couples therapy for my husband and I. That was nice. So I went into therapy. I went in and saw her twice a week. And again, those bills and resources were expensive, but I was able to make that a priority. Um, and we really just came up with a plan for me to go back to work. But I think it was about 6 months after he died that I realized that I was bitter. And it was really hard for people to be around me, but they were trying to give me grace. And I was just not empathetic toward anyone's problems or inconveniences. And I remember my therapist telling me, in the game of who has it worse, you'll probably always win.
Yeah.
And do you want to play that game for the rest of your life? And that was when I realized that my 10 out of 10, someone else might be like, well, that's where someone has it worse than me and someone has it better than me, but that's their 10 out of 10, and this is my 10 out of 10. I hope this is my 10 out of 10. It can always get worse, it can always get better, but hopefully someone else, the worst thing that's ever happened to them is that they stubbed their toe. know, someone else, I found myself, one of my friends, her mom was going through breast cancer. And I just remember trying so hard to listen to it. And I'm like, well, she's not going to die. She's fine. And which is terrible. That's terrible to think. And so it just really, I can't say that it was one defining moment, but I finally just got sick of how I was being. And 6 months might seem like not a very long time, but when you're living in that level of anger for 6 months, it was pretty bad. And I didn't I I didn't turn to alcohol. I didn't turn to, anything because I was pregnant. I don't know.
Good. Good.
I exercised a lot. I tried to just really, I did that every day. I ran, went skiing, did multiple workouts a day, just trying to control something. But
Right.
it was, yeah, that was, and then once she was born in August, I was able to finally see past that because it until she was born, I couldn't see past anything.
Absolutely. So it was kind of a, I don't know, I guess, yeah, it was her literal birth, but it was like a, I don't know, a new era for you in your life, was it? I mean, like, because now you
Yeah.
have this child,
Mhm.
and obviously not gonna replace your husband. Like, I mean, I mean,
Mhm.
when you lose somebody that you love that much, like you continuously love, it feels like they're there, right? And so all the time,
Mhm.
they're not physically there. And now, you know, raising your child, I can't can't put myself in your shoes, but I can definitely relate to what you were talking about earlier, where it's like, you are so wrapped up in your own, sort of grief and pain to where it's like so hard to be empathetic towards anybody else. Like
Mhm.
I think you were just talking about where it's like you hear about other people's like really bad things that they're going through, which are like colossal, calamities inside of their own lives, but they're like, well, it's gonna work out. But like that's what you're thinking in your head.
Mhm.
But you're like, yeah, you don't have it that bad. And I mean, like, I'm still
Mhm.
surviving after all this. And, um,
Mhm.
I think I swung a different way after that, where it was trying to, I don't know, immediately trying to make everything better too for other people. Sometimes where it's like, okay, what's your emergency? What are you feeling like? Well, look at it this way, and it's like see the bright side of things, which is the other
Yeah,
extreme, and not helpful. I
not
think,
helpful, and that's
yeah,
definitely something that, and I don't wanna be that podcast guest that's like, "Buy my book, listen to my book, da 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 da."
yeah,
Because
yeah,
trust me, I've had people on there,
yeah,
but I do wanna just kinda reference that was a big part of why I wrote my book, and it never set out to be a book, it was a lot of journaling, and originally it was 20,000 words, and I was gonna title it, can I swear?
oh, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
It was gonna be called "Shit Not to Say When Someone's Husband Dies," and
Okay,
it was that first 6 months was it
that's a
was pretty
helpful title. I
bad.
like it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I know, I mean, and so I went back, and so it was like I'd say every 3 to 6 months, I would just, journal and kinda update on if I was having some big feelings or small feelings or whatever. Really, it's 5 years of growth and,
yeah,
going back to it, it's like, I don't recognize that person, but then I don't recognize that person, and now I would definitely say things different or feel things different, but the stress and in the moment, it just does things to you, and, um, but I think, that was a big part of what I wanted to share in that story is that, I had read so many books. There was one phrase that I came across that, bitter or better. It can either make you bitter or it can make you better.
yeah,
And I have a chapter about that in my book about how I'm glad that that hit me about a year and a half out. Because if I came across that at 3 months, I would have, thrown it across the room or something. But it, it, it resonated with me when I was ready to hear it. And so I do feel like I have a lot of widows that follow me or, groups like that on social media. And for a while, I kind of was in the grief space when I talk about my entrepreneurial journey. My book was going to be self help. So I decided, okay, instead of shit not to say when your husband dies, then I was gonna turn it into a memoir of just this is this traumatic thing that happened, but there wasn't exactly an arc. It was just kinda like, this is holy cow, he died. And then,
yeah,
and then there was just a lot of little things. And then I tried to turn it into self-help. And I tried giving tips on being angry. And I tried giving, and then it was other self-help books that I read and, my entrepreneurial journey. And I actually realized that when talking to people that are grieving, it wasn't resonating as deeply as I thought when I kept talking about how bad that anger stage was, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, maybe it was just me." Like, "Oh, not everyone is that angry." Other people are bargaining, other people are depressed, other people are, whatever it might be, the stages that they fluctuate through. Not everyone sits in their anger like I did. And that's okay too. So I thought, who am I? Yes, I'm a nurse practitioner, but I'm not going to write this grief. I'm not going to write a book on how to get over your anger. It just didn't sit right. And so
Right.
then I thought I was never going to publish the book. But there were all these lessons in there, and I had told people I was writing it. And then as my farm really took off and, we built this space and, we have thousands of people that come to our farm every year, I realized that 5 years from now, I want to just be the flower lady that went through something hard. I absolutely love coming on podcasts just like this one and sharing my story and sharing my message, but it also, I have to realize that I'm sharing these positive inspirational quotes, and me the first 6 months would have been like, who does that lady think she is? Like
Yeah.
it might not be helpful to say it's going to get better. It's going to get easier.
Well, that's the funny thing about meeting people, like we were talking about earlier, where it's like you pass by, if you go out and walk the sidewalks of any city, or if like I went out here to the beach, like I'm passing by, hundreds of dozens of people, and you never know what any single one of them have actually gone through in their lives. And like, but on the surface, I'm just seeing you in like right now. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously you're a successful entrepreneur, right? And I'm like, oh wow, she just had it made all through life, right? And so she's had such a privileged life to be able to make it to where she is now. But like knowing like you've been through some of the hardest things that a human being can actually go through. But you never know it unless you speak it. So I mean, obviously you found yourself in a position where you overcame the grief, you know what I mean, or you found your way, you worked with it, right? And so it doesn't ever like fully
Mhm.
probably, but to find success on the other side and to I don't know, to be human, I guess, but like not being drowning in what was and in the past, you know what I mean? And that pain and hurt, but you're using that now and also making really great memories for other people on your farm, which is incredible. It kind of turns it around. That's kind of the way I see it.
I think that that's the other part of it is everyone has everyone's got something.
Of course.
Everyone's gone through something hard. And that's what I try to share, kind of the secondary losses,
Yeah.
and helping people understand that. I mean, I don't want to compare. It's really hard to compare losing a spouse to losing a parent to losing a best friend.
Yeah.
But losing a spouse, I mean, your entire every aspect of your day-to-day changes.
Yeah.
The things you shop for groceries for, the things that I mean, just every decision. I mean,
You're a life partner.
you
Of
don't
course.
and
Yeah.
and in some ways, that freedom after, about 2 years after he died, it was it was almost rebellious in the back of my mind. I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna go get a coffee every day, even though we decided we weren't those people that did that because it's not in our budget, but I'm gonna do it because nobody's gonna stop me." Like, just, whatever it might be, and just kinda, he'd be mad about this. Too bad, shouldn't have died." Like, just, some of those little little quirks that you go through, but,
Yeah.
I am remarried now, and that's been something that
Okay.
has been amazing, and I do talk about that story a little bit, about how fortunate I am that he was such a wonderful and understanding person, because I, uh, I think that I fell in love pretty quickly, and that could have been
Yeah. Right.
not a great story. Like, that could have been, I
Yeah.
mean, we're dating, and then
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, he's moving in," and it's like, "What?" I look back now and it was a little quick, Liz. That was a little, but, um,
Well, I'm glad it
he's
worked out.
fantastic.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, that experience has changed the way that you relate to other people, especially when it comes to like, I don't know, dating or meeting someone, right? because you've got that. I mean, that kind of lingers, with you still. I mean, even if you're
Mhm.
present with the person and you're having the best time ever, and it's like you're really relating and like you're on a different level and you feel good, there's still probably some of those lingering, feelings and memories from, of course, your spouse who passed away. And I don't know. For me, it's like if I was in that situation, it's like there's almost like, well, this terrible thing happened to me because of to my other partner, and am I
Mhm.
setting myself up to go through this all over again? You know?
Yes, absolutely. It was very I wasn't I was pretty clear from the beginning that I don't know that I wanna get married again. And well, like, we're just not gonna talk about it type of thing. Um, and he understood that, and it was one of those, so he was friends with my husband, and he really it is a pretty wholesome story when it comes to the fact that, for the first during that 6 months, during that anger stage, he was here a lot. I mean, I have a property with a ton of outbuildings, and it's Minnesota, and there's snow, and there's lawn to be mowed and whatever, and he was that friend that he had a girlfriend at the time that my husband passed away, which also is a huge little factor in the story, is that if he was this single bachelor friend, I would have been like, "You can't come over," but I was like,
Right.
"Oh,
Yeah.
he's dating someone," and they weren't dating very long, and it fizzled out, not because of me, but just through that. But he was spending a lot of time here helping just as a good friend. And then after a while, people started asking, they're like, "What's going on there?" And I'm like, "We're not going to talk about it. Like, we're just
Yeah.
not talking about it. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't matter." And I remember
Right.
telling my mom, "It doesn't matter. I have to focus on my kids." And she's the one who said, "Well, what if he's what's best for the kids? Like, he makes you happy. It's."
Yeah.
And so then we were dating, and he was around a lot, and then he traveled for work. So really he was just home here on the weekends. And so I was like, "Well, you might as well just move in, stay here."
Yeah.
And so he had gotten out of a long-term relationship maybe a year prior and hadn't bought a house or anything yet.
Right.
And so it just kind of, for circumstance, like, well, you're just here. And so then it's like, okay, what are people going to judge with that? And I guess I don't really care what they think from that standpoint, but it I didn't share it openly. Like, there was nothing on social media. His sister had tagged me. We had been dating like a year, and she tagged me at their family Christmas, and I was like, "Don't put that on Facebook. I don't want people to know."
Yeah.
And she's like, "I don't think anyone's gonna care, but okay, I'm sorry." And I just was so worried about what people were gonna think, and if they knew I was, and there were people that there's still people there, and they're mean. They're just mean
Yeah.
and I try to really focus on intention, and I try to think that people just didn't know what to say, but some people were just mean, and they knew what they were saying, and they're like, "Oh, well, I see you've moved on." Like, do you
Yeah.
know how hurtful that sounds and that
Right.
is? And
I think
I
that's
think you
something that
said it
keeps
to be
people from
hurtful.
being
Like,
able
I
to,
think you said
yeah,
it to be mean. Okay.
that kind of
Whereas other
keeps us
people
from
that are just
being. Sorry, I was
Mhm,
just I think that keeps, a lot of us from being able to move on or to make a healthy decision in our own life because we're like, "Well, what will people think?"
mhm,
I mean, because that's
yep,
not normal, I mean, that's not a story I've ever heard of or thought of about. But I mean, as if we're taught, as children, you know what I mean? Like you're an individual, you're unique. There's nobody else like you, and you can do anything you want in the world, right? And so we're taught that. And then when we grow up into
mhm,
adults, where it's like, no, 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 you got to fit into this box. And so, but like it makes
mhm,
if like we are original people, and we all have our own, uniqueness to us. Then obviously, how we relate to another unique individual is going to be different for every single situation. So, like,
mhm,
rather than trying to define what a relationship should or should not be, all the boxes that you need to tick, like we should be defining that for ourselves. But I think that does prevent a lot of people from being able to move forward or to make like good choices in their lives, even when like if it's
mhm,
this guy was obviously a healthy choice for you, right? But it was
mhm,
conventional. It's not the conventional, love story that we're told. And
mhm.
so
And I had to sit with that too, because I think a lot of what was hesitant to me was, I kept telling him, like, "Go find someone that doesn't have baggage. What do you want me for?" Like, go, like, you realize, like, this is gonna be so hard. This is not what you
yeah,
dreamed of. I mean, you don't wanna spend Father's Day also going to the cemetery, because 'cause you're gonna
yeah,
have to. You're going to
Right.
have to share Father's Day if we have more kids, or, like I'm going to cry every Christmas morning because my husband's not here, but I'm also going to be happy with you. You don't deserve that. You don't want that. Go find someone else, like just, and he stayed and
Yeah.
he got it.
That's great.
And he's
Glad,
been
glad
so
he stayed.
supportive through all of it. And, but I just said, I'm like, this is not going to be easy. I don't know how to do this. And luckily, and just knowing, I think what helps me is knowing this contentment of the, people that judge or think one thing or the other. It's until you've lived through it, you just don't get it. And you just don't understand how it would be possible. And, the timing of whether someone's opens up their heart again or not. And
Sure.
I always say I had a wonderful marriage. I had a wonderful partner. I knew what that was like to live life with a partner, and I I do think that that's a compliment to Josh, but I don't, if Brent wasn't Brent, my husband now, I maybe wouldn't have got remarried, unless he was
Right.
unless he was amazing and I realized, hey, life is better with you in it as my partner
Yeah.
and helping me and raising the kids with me. And, he's the girls, they know him as dad, and they know that their dad Josh died, and they know that, but they also, I'm like, here's this wonderful person willing to go all in. There's no way Josh would want him to not
Yeah.
help out, when he's willing and there to do it and respectful of him. And,
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I mean, like, I know you're still on your journey, but you've made it a long way from where you were, and continuously to do great things. And so I've really enjoyed listening to your story and to learn more about
thank
you
you.
and where you come from. Absolutely. Definitely want to read that memoir whenever it comes out.
Yeah, thank you. When is this episode coming out? We can say if it's
When do you need it to come out? How about that?
yeah.
I can do it soon or I
Well,
can do
my
it
book
later.
releases put it out sometime in February would be great. So
February.
pre-orders matter. And as an author, the goal is to drive everyone to Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
Not that place that starts with an A. And the reason Barnes and Noble is because they will track the orders, and then it shows up on their bestseller lists, and their target audience also buys books in person, and it's kind of this book world. They play really nice with the libraries and the independent
Okay.
bookstores, and that's what helps get the message into the hands of those that might need it most.
Okay.
So right now we're just trying to really drive orders to Barnes and Noble, and I mean, I have I have a large audience with my flower farm. There's like 10,000 followers on there, and they're mostly local people and tons of support in Minnesota. But my Instagram is of my personal, my author, it's less than 2,000 people. It's not like I have this enormous following,
Sure.
but of 4,000 books coming soon in like the pre-order stage, my book for the last month has been consistently ranking in the top 1% with Cher and Bad Bunny. And
Okay.
that doesn't mean
Nice.
I've sold the most books, but it means that the people that are clicking on it are actually buying it, that it's
Yeah.
getting bought by a large amount of people instead of some people just buying a ton of books at once. And I think that that goes to show that the message is resonating,
Oh, for sure.
and it's really exciting.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so we call this long term because we try to learn about, solutions that you've, sort of implemented
Mhm,
in your own life. And so for you, if you were to give advice to someone who maybe there is, a spouse out there that has found themselves in the exact same situation that you were in, right? Their husband passed away, they find out that they're pregnant,
mhm.
and like you went through 6 months of a lot of emotions and a lot of different things that you had to deal with on your own, but what was be some good advice that you would give to that woman that was going through that?
I think that keep in mind that you are the one that has to live with your choices, not everyone else. And I wouldn't say that it influenced my decisions that I made, but it made me feel a lot of guilt about it. We lived in this 130-year-old farmhouse, and we ended up we were planning on building a new house. That was always the plan. We already had the plans drawn up. We already had the builder. We were just trying to save money for a couple more years to do it. Well, when he died, I'm like, I need a new house. I can't. This heat bill is $800 a month, and then whatever. And people were judging that. Well, oh, she went and built a new house. But we were going to build a new house anyway, and you would have judged me anyway if my husband was alive. All of those little things. But it made me just hyper aware, and I think I made up some scenarios in my mind. I think that were there people judging my choices? Of course there were, but I don't think it was as many as I thought, if that makes sense. And so, just you're the one that has to live with your choices. It's your life. You get to control what's on your obituary at the end of it. That's something that's really driven me is I love reading people's obituaries. And I mean, my husband's was so long, so packed full because he did a lot of things in his 40 years, 39 years. Like that, you're the only one who gets to decide what's on that. It's a summary of your life that you chose to live.
For sure. It's great. Thank you. Okay, Liz. Well, where can people go to keep up with you to find out more about what you're doing? I know you've got a lot of different ventures out there.
I have a lot of different ventures. So the best thing is just go to my website, lizfiedlermergen.com. And from there, you can find the book, the podcast, the flower farm, any of those things. It's just kind of a landing page for all of it. Otherwise, on Instagram, Liz Fiedler Mergen is the best place.
Perfect. So I'm going to put links to that on the show notes. And if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be there in the description. So, Liz, thank you so much for sharing the story and not being afraid to talk about it. I mean, not just on this show, but I know you do this pretty regularly on your own podcast. And I think a lot of people need to hear it because we all experience grief at some point, at some time. And like, I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of people to help process that and to find something on the other side.
Thank you, Ty.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to all of these long-term episodes where we're learning from people who have gone through these circumstances and tried to apply how does this apply to me and my life and making myself better. If you are listening to this as an audio podcast, you can find us on YouTube, Long-Term Podcast and Recovery. We're over 15,000 subscribers right now, which is kind of crazy right now. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can find us on all the audio podcast platforms from Apple, Spotify, and the rest. Action term I always give everybody at the end of this show is that, yes, we love the subscribes, we like the likes and all of that. But the main important thing is to share this episode with someone who could really benefit from hearing the message that Liz said here today, right? So somebody out there is grieving. You may know them. Please share this episode with them because the worst thing that can happen is they don't listen to it. The best thing that can happen is that it saves your life. It turns just something around for them, right? So that's the important part. And that's how we're going to grow this message and how we expand the show. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. And we'll see you in the next episode.